My name's Simonaz, and welcome to another Simonaz video. I've been having a blast raiding Icecrown Citadel almost non-stop since it came out. And while I've been live streaming, you guys have had a lot of questions for me. Some of those questions more frequently asked than others. So I'd like to take this video to address 3 of the most common questions I've been asked ever since Icecrown Citadel came out. We're going to talk about when to gem armor penetration as a combat rogue. We're going to talk about assassination builds that use Rupture in their rotation, and we're going to tackle the age-old debate of Sunder armor versus expose armor. So let's get into it. I want to start with the assassination Rupture builds, since that one's pretty exciting to me. Assassination builds that use Rupture will take the Blood Spatter talent to improve the damage of Rupture. They'll drop the Tricks of the Trade glyph to take the Rupture glyph to, again, improve the damage of Rupture. And for this to be good, you must have a Feral Druid in your group providing the Mangle debuff that'll also increase the damage of Rupture. The goal is to make Rupture a slightly better finishing move than Envenom. All that together looks like this: dropping 2 points out of lethality, taking Blood Spatter, the glyphs are in the upper right, and the Mangle debuffs over there, that's provided by your Druid buddy. And your rotation really isn't that different from a normal assassination build. Whenever you're about to cast an Envenom normally, you just check to see if Rupture's already active. If it isn't active, you cast the Rupture to put it up. But if it is already active, instead you cast your Envenom. And that's it. It's really that simple. So why would you do this? Well, losing the Tricks of the Trade glyph means you're going to contribute about 200 less DPS to the total raid contribution, because that glyph is really powerful in enhancing your Tricks of the Trade ability. However, you're going to do about 100 more personal DPS, depending on your gear and the circumstances. These numbers vary. Here I ran through the simulator with Phase 3 best in slot, the current gear that my ult had. I didn't have 4-piece bonus at this point, and Phase 4 best in slot with 3 different talent setups: the 18-2 setup with Envenom, the 13-7 setup with Envenom, and the 13-7 setup for Rupture that we're talking about here. And you can see in all the cases, the Rupture DPS is higher than all the other ones by varying amounts, but these simulator results do not factor in the raid contribution of the Tricks of the Trade glyph. And that's really what you're losing when you go for a Rupture build. Now, not only does the simulator not show you Tricks of the Trade raid DPS contribution, but WarcraftLogs seems to not care about that either. And I'm going to take a moment to go on a little tangent or rant about this. I think it's kind of dumb. These are the damage to bosses rankings at the 99th percentile, accessed on the 29th of October. We have Assassination Rogues at 10,336.8 and Feral Druids topping the chart at 10,879.9 DPS on the damage to bosses rankings. These rankings do not factor in the raid contribution of Tricks of the Trade that the rogue provides to the raid. Here is one example of a really minimal effort Tricks of the Trade, of me doing Tricks of the Trade on a warrior who is frankly not a very good target for Tricks of the Trade, and I contributed an additional 290 DPS via my Tricks of the Trade. If you added 290 DPS to the rogue's score here, you'd be at 10,626, and you'd be the 4th overall class for damage rankings. Here's a Tricks of the Trade that was marginally more effort. I put a Tricks of the Trade on an Affliction Warlock who snapshotted a Corruption at the start of the fight, and then I put the rest of my Tricks of the Trade into a Feral Druid throughout the rest of the fight, which is generally a better Tricks of the Trade target than a Warrior, and I contributed 789.6 DPS with my Tricks of the Trade in this encounter. If I add 789 DPS to the Rogue's score here, I'd be at 11,126 DPS, gapping the top ranked DPS by over 200 DPS, making Assassination Rogue, when considering Tricks of the Trade DPS contribution, the best damage to bosses class in the entire game. But on these charts, you look at them and you say, wow, Rogue's number 7, they're probably bad. Because WarcraftLogs, for whatever reason, has decided to simply discount the contribution of damage from Rogue's Tricks of the Trade ability. And I can hear you right now already typing your furious comments saying, LOL right, and Shamans should get Heroism DPS, or Unholy Death Knights should get the DPS contribution from their 13% spell damage debuff they apply. And I'm going to stop you right there. that's different. When you bring 2 shamans to a raid, your raid does not benefit double from heroism. When you bring 2 unholy death knights, you don't get 26% enhanced spell damage. You get 1 person doing those, and your raid benefits, and that's it. Tricks of the Trade is different. Every rogue can contribute damage with Tricks of the Trade. 2 rogues, twice the benefit. So overall, I think this is stupid. Rogues are significantly better than they are represented on WarcraftLogs chart, and I feel like this is pretty similar to if WarcraftLogs went and said, you know, fire mages, we probably just shouldn't count the ignite damage over time effect. We're going to factor that out of your rankings, and all of a sudden, fire mages are number 8 DPS, when in fact, they're contributing significantly more to the raid. Okay, I cut the video, I took a deep breath, I'm over the rant. Let's go to the next topic, when to gem armor penetration as a combat rogue. In Phase 3 best in slot gear, combat rogues were using mostly plus 40 attack power gems in their gem slots to provide the maximum DPS. In Phase 4 best in slot, most of your gem slots are going to be filled with plus 20 armor penetration gems. And naturally the question arises, when should you switch from attack power gems over to armor penetration gems on your combat rogue? Now, unfortunately, there's no cut and dry answer that is both easy to understand and also correct. When you switch to armor penetration gems is about general character power, not about any single stat benchmark like getting this much attack power or this much armor penetration on the rest of your gear or anything like that. The most precise answer is to use a simulator or spreadsheet tool to compare attack power gems versus armor penetration gems every time you get an upgrade. And as soon as the tool says it's a DPS increase to go to the armor penetration gems, well then there you have it, switch to the armor penetration gems. But most people are not going to want to pull up a simulator every single time they get an upgrade to check if it's time to switch to armor penetration gems. What I would say is an easy answer is to gem every new item you get with armor penetration. Maybe early on, this is going to be like slightly less DPS than if you put attack power gems into those, but it's probably not a very big deal, and you'll naturally move into the state where you want all your gems to be armor penetration, and you'll be pretty much along for the ride. Now, you may have to keep in mind some armor penetration caps. The normal cap, which is the most amount of armor penetration your character can benefit from, is 1,399. If you ever have more armor penetration than this, the additional armor penetration provides no damage benefit for your character. It's wasted. If you're a rogue using a mace and mace specialization, this cap is lower. It's only 1,189 armor penetration on your gear because the mace specialization makes up for some of that armor penetration. Some people will talk about a soft cap on armor penetration, and I'd say this is a fairly poorly defined term, but most of the time when people are talking about a soft cap, they're talking about a trinket like Mjolnir Runestone that gives you a temporary bonus to armor penetration. And the soft cap is your passive armor penetration combined with the temporary bonus reaching the normal hard cap of 1,399. So if we're talking about Runestone, then the soft cap on your passive armor penetration would be 649 or 438 if you're using both Runestone and you have a mace specialization. So if you have more passive armor penetration than these soft caps while you're using your Runestone, the additional armor penetration over the soft cap is less valuable per point, or you could interpret it as your Mjolnir Runestone is becoming less and less valuable as you move farther and farther past this soft cap. And the higher above the soft cap you get, essentially, the more incentivized you are to replace the Runestone with something like Comet's Trail, Death's Verdict, or the Herkimal War Token are all trinkets you could get to replace Runestone that come from emblems or Defiler's Scourgestone currency that should be pretty easily farmable and reliably accessible to you. Finally, we come to what is both my favorite and most hated topic in this video, Sunder armor versus Expose armor. This is a debate as old as time, with rogues not wanting to cast Expose and warriors not wanting to cast Sunder armor. Frankly, it's not fun because it lowers your DPS. You might find the odd person out who enjoys the Expose armor rotation as a rogue or really wants to help the team as a warrior, but let's be real, most people don't want to eat a significant individual DPS loss to provide a debuff to the raid. What's true in Wrath of the Lich King has been true since phase 1 and is still true now is this. For warriors, the cost to initially apply the debuff is very high, and the cost to maintain the debuff over time is very low. They have to cast 5 Sunder Armors right away to get it stacked up, and then they have to press just 1 Sunder Armor every 30 seconds to maintain that once it's already applied. For rogues, the cost to initially apply Expose Armor and the cost to maintain the debuff is pretty much medium. It's pretty much a flat line of DPS loss compared to the time of the encounter. So in general, it's better to use Expose Armor on shorter engagements or in situations where a warrior will stop attacking the target for 30 seconds or more and the Sunder Armors would fall off. And better to use Sunder Armor on longer fights with limited downtime where they can maintain a 5 stack of Sunder Armor throughout the entire encounter. Expose is definitely the way to go on Sindragosa, Blood Prince Council, and Lich King because they have these target swappings and these forced downtimes where Sunder would fall off. For all the other fights, you could Expose Armor or you could Sunder Armor. You know, where is the line for what's considered a long fight for Sunder or a short fight where you'd want to expose? And we could use simulator or spreadsheet tools to try to answer this question. But how important is what the simulators say? And should you care what the simulators say? I mean, like, the simulators are not the game. The game is the game. When you make a comparison with simulator tools, you have to make a lot of assumptions to make it a fair comparison. Assume the characters are the same gear level, that they're the same skill level, that they're both getting 100% uptime on the target, and you also have to assume that the simulators themselves are constructed in an equally accurate manner. And we know the simulators are not all created equal, but maybe they're equal enough to make this a reasonable comparison. All these assumptions may not be true for your raid, and the farther your raid is off from these assumptions, the less applicable the simulator results are to your raid. Now, even if you do think these simulator results are good and applicable to your raid, they may not be significant. This is a chart from some of the most recent work I've seen done about using simulators to compare Sunder versus Expose Armor. In my opinion, this work is done by people who are making an honest effort to use the simulators fairly to compare simulator DPS loss for Sunder and Expose. And it shows an inflection point at 300 seconds where beyond that time, Rogue is losing more DPS than Warrior, and before that time, Warrior is losing more DPS than Rogue. However, you can look at these DPS numbers for a large stretch of time prior to 300 seconds and simply say, wow, 79 DPS difference for one class to do it versus another. That just isn't a big deal. In a raid, doing 222,832 DPS to Deathbringer Saurfang, I would say that these DPS numbers are not big enough that it is compelling evidence that all raids should force rogues to do Expose Armor on any fight length below 300 seconds. These are just not meaningful amounts of DPS difference using tools that are, frankly, probably not applicable to a majority of raids. I would say you should probably rotate who does this role if no one volunteers. You know, 1 week the warrior gets to pump and do full maximum damage they can, and then the next week the warrior is sundering and the rogue gets to do their full damage potential and have fun. If you do have someone that volunteers to cover this debuff and does the job well, well, you should probably reward them, like with higher loot prio or whatever. Overall, I feel like people take the simulator results a little bit too seriously and don't really put them into perspective of their 200,000 DPS raid, arguing over one class losing 79 more DPS than another to apply a debuff. Thank you for watching. I hope you have fun in Icecrown Citadel. I hope this video has been helpful and educational for you, and I hope you're excited as I am for Season of Discovery that we just saw at BlizzCon. I will probably make a video about this, giving my more in-depth thoughts, but the TLDR version is, I'm super excited about this. This looks super cool. I'll see you later. Have a good day.